This is Arlington High School's debate show, Tiger Clash. I'm your moderator, Jake Stoop. Each month we bring in two of your fellow students to debate a certain topic. Welcome to the 5th edition of Tiger Clash. Batman and Spider-Man are iconic characters in the Marvel and DC universe. These characters share the same goal of battling crime in their universes by using their supernatural skills and their equipment. With the Batman premiering in theaters last week, we wanted to see which superhero is the best, Spider-Man or Batman. Joining me today in this debate are Nathan Newtalk and Andy Spann. And Nathan, I want to start with you. Tell me what grade you're in, tell me what you like to do, and when you first started to like Spider-Man.
I'm a senior. I like to play video games and watch Spider-Man. And I think I've liked Spider-Man for basically my whole life.
Okay, what about you, Andy?
I started liking Batman right around my early childhood when I saw Batman Begins, the film by Christopher Nolan.
Okay.
I really gained an interest in Batman just because of his character and his devotion to what he does.
Mm-hmm. What else do you like to do just in your free time?
I love to spend time with my friends and play video games.
Okay, cool. So both of y'all like video games, and I want to start with you, Nathan. What makes Spider-Man the most heroic?
Well, Spider-Man is a hero that's willing to give up everything in his personal life in order to save anyone. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter how small the crime. He will save anyone and do things that other heroes see as beneath them.
Okay. What about you, Andy? And do you have a comment on what Nathan just said?
So, to me, Batman is the most heroic hero just because he has managed to become a symbol in his city, Gotham City. He's become a symbol of hope. He's become a symbol of security. He's become a symbol of safety to the people of Gotham. And he is actually known in, his world as the greatest stopper of crime and the greatest crime fighter.
Okay. Do you have a comment on what Nathan said about how Spider-Man will sometimes go to the extent of something that other superheroes are not willing to do?
I actually seem to disagree with that because, based on Spider-Man's history, he seems to, very carefully pick his fights. He wants to focus on what he wants to do. It seems like he just wants the attention.
He definitely does want certain attention from certain people, and he definitely wants to be liked. But I would say in most of his stories, he seems completely he seems content with just being hated by people. He doesn't want to do much to change that. Like in Spider-Man No Way Home, he does try to erase everyone's memories of him because they think that he killed Mysterio. But he doesn't do that for himself. He does that because that's affecting his friends' lives as well. He's doing that for them, not himself.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but, once again, those are his friends. Do you think he would, I don't think he would make the same decision if it was a random person on the street. Whereas Batman repeatedly is constantly saving random people who have nothing to do with him. And not only is he doing that, but he humbled himself from his extremely wealthy and influential background of being in the Wayne family. And not only being in the Wayne family, but being the heir of the Wayne Enterprises.
Well, I don't see what your point about him stopping anyone is, because Spider-Man does the exact same thing. I said that earlier. He'll just stop any crime, no matter how petty.
Yeah, speaking of stopping crime, I want to start with you, Andy. Who has better or stronger enemies that they're going up against?
I'm very confident in saying that Batman has much stronger enemies than Spider-Man. I'll give you an example or a couple of examples of enemies that Batman has faced against. So I'm going to start off with Bane, which is a very notorious Batman villain. He is, a monster. So he actually uses this thing called a venom serum, and he boosts his physical strength, his speed, his reflexes, all of his senses. He's actually been known to lift and press 3 to 4 tons and defeat other famous superheroes in the DC universe. Another one I would like to mention is Deathstroke, which is, he's kind of like a military science experiment that Batman has faced multiple times and defeated. He's capable of beating, once again, multiple other heroes in the DC universe, and he is a master of hundreds of martial arts forms. He's just absolutely mastered the art of combat, and he's a weapons master, and he uses guns and Batman doesn't, and Batman still won.
Now, yes, Batman does have all of those villains, but does Batman have Big Wheel? Does Batman have a supervillain that rides around in a Ferris wheel with guns attached to it? I don't think he does. I haven't heard about anything like that. No. But in all seriousness, I would say that Spider-Man does have very similar villains to some of the ones he mentioned. Like, what was it, Deathstroke that you said? That was like a military science experiment? I mean, Green Goblin is basically the same thing, and Green Goblin is also very similar to the Joker, but more physically threatening than him. I think that's all I have to say.
So when you're comparing these two, you say they're pretty similar, but how does Spider-Man attack those enemies? How does he make himself known or make his presence known to them more than Batman would?
Spider-Man's main priority isn't really fighting. Like, in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2002, there's a scene in which the Green Goblin he makes Spider-Man choose between saving a bunch of children and Mary Jane, and Spider-Man instead tries to find a way to save both of them and puts fighting the Green Goblin as a secondary objective. He's definitely more about saving people.
Okay. Yeah, so all right, we are going to take a quick break, and here's an inside look at Arlington's media department. Welcome back. Spider-Man and Batman are two of the most iconic comic book characters. Let's go to Tired Clashers reporter Savannah Worley to see what Arlington Community School students had to say.
Thanks, Jake. I thought it would be fun to see what the younger kids had to say about Batman versus Spider-Man. So I took a trip to Donaldson Elementary and interviewed the students there. Let's take a look at which superhero they favored the most.
Spider-Man, he usually climbs up walls because, he has this web that he can shoot up and climb.
Batman, because he can throw bats and he has his own signal on a light thingy.
Spider-Man, why? Because he can go invisible, shoot lightning, and climb on ceilings and walls.
Spider-Man, because he can shoot webs.
Spider-Man, why?
Because I like him. He's cute.
Spider-Man, why?
I like the comics, and I like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland.
Batman,
why?
Because bats are adorable.
Spider-Man, why? Mostly because he can swing on walls
and he's just a lot better than Batman.
Spider-Man.
Why?
Well, Spider-Man's cooler. I like his colors. I think he's stronger in some ways because he's able to fly, kind of, with his webs, and yeah.
Spider-Man, because it depends on which one you're talking about, but the newest one in the MCU, I would say Spider-Man, because since he has Iron Man who gave him all his gadgets.
Spider-Man, but Spider-Man has web shooters, and that makes him a great superhero, but also Batman is very clever, and he's the Gotham's most famous investigator, so I would say Batman or Spider-Man. I'm confused, but I would say Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, because Batman is way too old for doing this stuff. Spider-Man's younger. Batman can barely move his hips. He's a millionaire. Why is he doing this? And Spider-Man can just tangle him up.
Batman.
Why?
Well, I think that it's really cool how he's like a bat, because I love bats, honestly. And I think it's super cool because he's kind of like an old superhero.
Spider-Man. Why? Because Batman's really old, and I just think that Spider-Man, he can just travel way easier, and he's just like way younger than Batman, so we can just travel way easier. And plus, Tom Holland is way cuter.
Spider-Man.
Why?
Because he's the best.
It seems like the kids from Donaldson think Spider-Man is way better than Batman. They seem to be more interested in the looks and superpowers of these superheroes.
Yeah, that's not a promising future when you have kindergartners to third graders thinking that the reason this Superman is better is because they're cuter. That's not a great thing to look forward to the future. But I want to start with Andy. Tell me a little bit about key characteristics that Batman has that outmatch Spider-Man.
You know, Batman is very famous for his intelligence. He's the #1 detective in the entire world, and I'd say in all of comics. He has many feats of his intelligence, like specific things he has done. I actually prepared a list. He's known for curing poison ivy, like the common plant that causes rashes. He created a universal translator that implements thousands of languages, millions. He created an all-watching satellite that has the ability to cover the entire globe and other planets. He brought Martian Manhunter, which is another hero from his world, back from the dead, like he was dead. He created a cloning machine and made clones of multiple people. He became the best human escape artist of all time. He's escaped from numerous traps, prisons, handcuffs, situations. He has brilliant, complex strategies, sometimes spanning lengths of months to years of just plans that are, so deep. And he has an entire armory handmade with multi-step gadgets. You have to completely make these things from scratch, and he managed to do that.
Well, he could only do the vast majority of the things on that list just because of how rich he is. Just having access to so much money that he can have basically anything in the world. I would say that Spider-Man has pretty equal feats. Maybe not as grandiose as Batman, but being able to make some impossible technology like the web shooter with very little money coming from a pretty poor family, I would say is a bit more impressive.
I'd have to disagree that that's impressive coming from a not as wealthy family. I'm familiar with Spider-Man's background about, the death of his uncle, and him and his aunt obviously have struggled financially. But Batman is also known for his resourcefulness. There are multiple instances in comic stories of Batman where Batman has started from absolutely nothing. An example of that would be the Nightfall series in the late 90s, where Batman got his back broken by Bane, which I mentioned earlier. He had to completely start and overcome an addiction to the Titan serum. He had to start from absolutely nothing. He managed to lose everything except for his own willpower.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next question?
Next question. All right. So with these two characters, we have seen relationships develop throughout their stories. Spider-Man ends up getting his girl, but Batman does not. In your opinion, does this affect their heroic standing? Starting with you, Nathan.
Does Spider-Man get the girl?
Spider-Man?
I would say that in a lot of his stories, he doesn't really get to be in a relationship. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2002, he actually rejects Mary Jane because he can't have a relationship with her due to being a superhero. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he directly causes the death of Gwen Stacy by disobeying the dying wish of her dad, which was to stay away from her, leave her out of it. In Spider-Man Homecoming, he can't be with Liz because her dad is a supervillain and he kept ditching her to beat him up. In Spider-Man No Way Home, he lets MJ lose her memory, and therefore their entire relationship, just because he thought that if he reintroduced himself to her life, that would probably mess her up. In the comic book storyline One More Day, he gives up his marriage to Mary Jane in order to bring Aunt May back to life. In the comic book storyline Superior Spider-Man, Otto Octavius takes over Peter Parker's body and starts becoming a superhero in his stead. And one of the first things he does is break up with Mary Jane because he can't guarantee her safety from being a superhero.
So
and
basically,
Peter Parker actually admires Doc Ock for doing something that he couldn't. And I would say in most of these instances, Spider-Man either doesn't let himself have a relationship for the greater good, or he learns something from having a relationship taken away from him.
So basically, I mean, if he were to make a decision based on a relationship, he's making the one that's best for the other person. I think that shows a lot of character for him. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, definitely does. He learns a lot from, trying to just trying to decide between being your average person that just wants to, have a fun life with his girlfriend, but not being able to do that, to be a superhero, to save people.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about Batman's relationship history and also comment on what Nathan said?
So Spider-Man's relationship history is honestly very admirable compared to Batman's. That's all I have to say about that. It's not all I have to say, but that's the end of my comment.
Mm-hmm.
So Batman's love life is actually a dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
He has had multiple failed relationships, and the ones that work out always end up in something just absolutely horrible happening, like the pregnancy of Talia al Ghul, which is not a horrible thing in and of itself, but the absolute demon spawn that came from it was just a complete pain to Batman. And in one storyline based off of the popular fighting game Injustice, Batman's child with Talia actually results in the death of his first Robin, Dick Grayson.
In one Spider-Man story, I can't remember what it is called, but Spider-Man having a relationship with Mary Jane actually results in her death due to having his radioactive genetics.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we're going to take another short break. Let's take a peek at ATV's magazine show. This is Arlington.
I think it's time we blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Welcome back to Tiger Clash. I'm here with Andy and Nathan discussing whether Batman or Spider-Man is the better superhero. And Nathan, this question I'm about to ask is kind of inspired by your costume. Can you talk about Spider-Man's costume design and how it outmatches Batman?
Well, in most iterations of Spider-Man, he uses a red and blue suit. And I'd say that definitely lets people that doesn't know who he is, let him know what he's about. Because like red and blue, those are the superhero colors. Like the vast majority of superheroes have, like they prominently feature at least one of the two colors. Like if you're getting robbed and Spider-Man shows up and you have no idea who he is, you can tell that guy's a superhero, everything's gonna be all right. But if you do that same scenario with Batman, who in most modern iterations is dressed in mostly black, you'd probably be more confused, even more scared, because you're trying to figure out what this guy is about. Spider-Man has an easily understandable design, but Batman looks like an edgy 13-year-old's DeviantArt OC.
I really did not appreciate that comment. I'm gonna be honest. I think that Spider-Man...
Can you look in a mirror?
Spider-Man looks like a mixed fruit flavored popsicle flying through the air in New York City.
Spider-Man doesn't fly?
He swings and ends up flying. He is
Sure.
lifted off the air. I mean the ground. Spider-Man...
Any comments?
You know, not only are the colors, like, you look like somebody threw up Skittles. Not only is it like that, but the lines on almost every single iteration of Spider-Man are just absolutely hideous.
Are they?
Looked like you played Connect the Dots.
That's just a matter of opinion.
I mean, he is wearing the gray, so I mean, like, as you're talking about dark colors showing up to save the day, I mean, you've got on a gray suit.
This is the suit, or well, this is actually an evil symbiote that has infected Spider-Man, and it affects his emotions. It makes him more angry, more villainous, and I think it being black symbolizes that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So how does that correlate to Batman?
I mean, obviously he looks more like a villain than a hero.
No.
And if you want to talk about which hero looks goofier, I don't think there's a way that you can justify having a big cape and bat ears on your costume.
No.
It's just impossible to take something like that seriously.
No. So...
No, before you continue,
I think it's funny. I think it's funny. I think you're funny.
Okay.
You're funny. So, you want to say something about you want to say something about the cape? Why don't I say something about your giant white bug eyes? You know, not only do you have giant white bug eyes, your entire theme is a spider. Something that gets stepped on daily by housewives. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you going to base yourselves off of something that has an entire phobia around it and then try to call yourself a symbol of peace or hope? You look like a clown.
Well, Spider-Man didn't choose to have spider powers. He called himself Spider-Man because of those powers, whereas Batman just kind of chose to be seen as a bat, which is something that I don't see normal people doing.
It's because Batman's not normal.
Yeah, I know.
Batman is unique and special. Batman has an extremely inspiring story, and how he developed the Batman persona is admirable. He got the idea of a bat from a traumatic childhood experience of falling down a well on his family property and being swarmed by bats in a cave, which later became his Bat Cave, which is his headquarters, and where he invents all his gadgets and kind of where he, I guess, sets up.
So who cares? He got scared by a bunch
Everybody
of bats.
cares. Millions
That's
of people love Batman.
I don't think I would call that a very endearing backstory.
Now, I would love to. No. I would love to.
Last comments.
Yeah.
I would love to comment on how, you know, we recently saw the video of how all of Spider-Man's fans are below the age of 10. That's all I have to say about that.
Spider-Man is a more family-friendly hero. That's why more kids know about him.
So he's more, available to the younger generation.
Yes.
Do you have any last comments on that?
I would not want my kid dressing up as Spider-Man.
You're objectively wrong.
Okay, well the good thing about debates is there's no real answer and it's just opinion. So I thank you for Nathan and Andy coming here. Thank you to our debaters for being guests on the show. Batman and Spider-Man are two of the most iconic characters in modern history, and it was fun debating on who is the better superhero. Be sure to tune in next month. If you haven't watched our last debate, go to ahstigerlife.com where Milan Bailey and Savannah Gray debate on whether social media does more harm than good. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next month on Tiger Clash.